I'm
Yeah.
recording. My shirt's disappearing and appearing. That's kind of weird. It's because
Yeah.
the background is black. So maybe I need to change my shirt next time.
You're phasing in and out of
I
our plane
am
of existence.
exactly. I'm phase shifting here. So how are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, wow, what a wild ride, huh?
Yeah, that was a wild ride. That was a fun wild ride.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting. I mean, we ran over and I would have happily gone on another, 2 or 3 hours, but it was clear to me that Brandon was running on fumes. Poor guy. Uh,
Yeah, that's the one thing. They pushed themselves really hard. They
yeah.
they they both, them and the other guys too, but especially Brandon and Erik. Those guys are enjoying the fact that they're burning the midnight oil. Um,
Yeah,
I
as
worry
he
about
said,
them. I
throwing the
worry.
candle into the fire.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. I worry about them. I do. Because at their age, they might not get a warning. It might just be some serious health thing, where they just have to stop and just like take a breath.
yeah.
And it's yeah, that's the one thing I noticed that they need to seriously consider. But it went well. I was surprised at the end. I was surprised that he offered to let us visit Skinwalker Ranch. Um, I did not expect that. I did not see that coming.
Likewise. Well, I wasn't, I guess, surprised. Like, honored would be the word for me. Um, but he can tell that, we're just as interested in finding out the answers, maybe not as committed as they are, but I mean, we really want to see what is coming out of this. Like we're involved in our own way.
We are, and we represent a lot of people that want to know too,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's really what this is about is the audience that we have on the Reddit forum. I think that's for me, that's what this is about more than anything else is reaching to them and getting them more involved and interested in what's going on and in an easier way sort of answer questions that we see a lot, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so
and I wrote, I had more questions. I mean, I had a lot more questions than I got to ask because we just ran out of time. Um, but I'm glad that we were able to cover, some of the big ones that keep coming up over and over again um, on the subreddit. Even if they have maybe been answered in some other places, they've been answered in places that people haven't seen for whatever reason. So it was really good to get in-depth answers about things like the 1.6 gigahertz signal and why they're so confident that is not, just something like a signal from a satellite, and that it corresponds with other things, that raise in the noise floor that he was talking about.
right. Yeah, I had a lot of questions that I still need answered. One of them was, why does he wear that brown shirt off season? I understand him wearing it every single day they're shooting. I understand that, but here we
Oh,
are. They haven't filmed anything since last August, and yet he's still wearing the brown shirt.
yeah.
I wanted to
Well,
ask him that. What's going on there? He's obviously got a closet full of these, but
well, that's
why?
the thing. Yeah.
But
Like
why not
history.
wear a different kind of shirt off season? That was interesting. I guess we're going to get that answer sometime in the future.
I would, yeah. I mean, and it's odd that that comes up a lot too. People are like, why are they always wearing the same shirt? Because that was literally just asked again today in the subreddit. You kind of, this has been asked a lot. And I found an answer going back a year. Somebody had asked about what shirt does Travis wear? What brand of shirt? Which is Arcturix for any of those
Oh,
watchers who are interested. But yeah, the History Channel tells them to buy 10 of the same shirt. And so I'm guessing, you got 10 of these things in your closet. They're going to enter your rotation a lot more. Excuse me.
yeah, but I mean, 8 months after they've stopped filming, he's still wearing the shirt. It feels a little bit like Gilligan's Island, just because he's always wearing the same shirt. So
Yeah.
I'll have to ask him that. But so this is a snapshot of what's going on just a couple of days since that interview dropped. It's now June 18th, 2023, and it got released like yesterday. Yesterday night was sort of when it dropped. It's got over 2,000 views already, the interview with Brandon. We've got around 200 subscribers to the channel. So that's some good growth, right? But more
Considering
importantly,
it's one of our first, I mean, it's our first interview. That's
right.
really impressive.
Well, you got to
Very,
start somewhere,
very
right?
happy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. But even more important is we've got our first feedback. So that is so critical to what we're doing here. That people, as they're listening to this, are down below in the comment section on YouTube, and they're actually putting in their comments, and they're asking us questions, and they're telling us what they think, positive or negative, because it'll only make us better. And I want to make sure that each one of these things that we do gets better and better and better. So we desperately need feedback from people. And so we have some feedback in already, which I think is interesting. I've gotten some feedback directly from people messaging me. I've looked on the forum a little bit, and I've looked on YouTube a little bit. So have you gotten feedback? Have you looked at anything, gotten anything direct?
I mean, just the usual, like, good job, really enjoyed it, that kind
Oh,
of stuff.
yeah. We get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say 90%, 95% positive. Absolutely. One thing I got was
go ahead.
sorry, let me get through my feedback here. So that this is fake, that the interview was fake, that we are actors and we were given a script and we did that in a studio. And we're shills for Brandon. So that whole fakery, that it's all fake, when they watch the show, they think the show is fake, is sort of like morphed onto us so that we're fake. So I thought that was interesting, because I told Brandon, I sent that to Brandon. I said, Brandon, people think this was Holy State. He's like, he doesn't know what to make of it either, which I thought was funny.
I mean, of all the allegations, I mean, because my technical issues alone should let people know that, this is not a studio production here. We had, of course, been running for days ahead of time with no issues. And man, so many things went wrong for me on that call. I was sort of like, it's probably a hitchhiker.
Things got weird for me when I tried to post it as well. YouTube and my computer acted very, very strange. So there was some weird stuff going on there for sure. Definitely. The other feedback I got, now again, 95% is positive. But the other feedback is that we're doing this for money, that somehow we've monetized the YouTube channel and we're making money, or that we're doing this for the money. You and I really didn't talk about money, but that's not in the plan at all. This is a hobby. I have a real full-time job. You've got your life issues as well. This is not about money at all. We don't work for Brandon. He didn't pay us. There's no salary involved. And here's the other thing. We don't work for Prometheus. Some people are also saying that we're employees of Prometheus. We're not employed. We're literally everything we said we were. We just didn't lie about what we said in the last. It's weird how people think that kind of stuff, that, we don't work for anybody. This is not about money. We're not trying to cash in on anything here. We're really just trying to do a podcast and talk about Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
Right. And any other paranormal things. My shirt is just freaking me out doing that.
Do you want to pause?
No, I can be weird today. It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. So that's the first feedback out of the chute, for the most part. Hasn't been viewed by a lot of people. Most people go into it about, I was saying, like 9 to 10 minutes, and then they stop watching it. So, you know what?
That's not unusual.
That's not unusual at all. Yeah. Ideally, you want them to see half of it, but we're losing people in 10 minutes now. And that's okay, because if we lose them in 10 minutes or in 30 minutes, and it's a 2.5 an hour podcast, by the time you get people at the end, when you still got, there's a couple of holdouts, right, that actually liked it and listened to the whole thing. If they stay for that last 15 minutes, things get, I think, interesting. But more importantly, those are the ones that are actually hooked and that actually want to watch more of these. If you only watch 10 minutes of this, you're not going to watch more of them. And you're just not, You either get it or you don't. You're either in or you're either out, right? Either you're getting the benefit of what we're doing here or you're not. You're just skimming it for 10 minutes. And there's nothing we can do about that.
Well, I think, we'll get more polished with this over time as well. I think we could have asked, because we saved some of the best questions for last when we did the interview. Like, we got some amazing stuff at the end that hasn't been talked about anywhere else. I think it wouldn't hurt us to take one or two of those types of questions in the future and lead off with them. Not everything is gonna be some groundbreaking revelation from people that's never been heard before. But we want to ask the questions that people haven't been asking, or that they haven't been able to really give good answers on, because the platform that they've been interviewed on, whoever it is. So yeah, I got some comments from a couple people. One of them, of course, it was talking about the length of the video and saying, well, maybe you could take some of the best parts and combine them down into one video. I'm sort of wondering if people will take some excerpts from our video to talk about them, because, that's a kind of a big industry on YouTube, is sort of reaction videos. So, and people are welcome to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would welcome that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even on Twitter, if they want to take a little clip of something that we asked Brandon and he answers it and they want to put it out of context, I mean, I would be interested to see that. I would like to see people actually take things from that interview and actually use them. Absolutely.
Or TikTok or whatever.
TikTok it up, man. Absolutely. Yeah. That's the big thing I wanted to talk about today, actually, was something that we slightly touched on during the interview with Brandon and Erik, but I think it's central to why we are doing this and why people should actually care what we're doing. And that is the crowdsourcing. The fact that people coming together to watch a YouTube video like this one and commenting below, they're giving themselves an opportunity to meet other people, maybe even near them, that are like-minded, that they can talk to. A lot of people they're alone. It's just them, right? Maybe not even their spouse or their children or whatever, or their parents. They're in a place where they're learning things or experiencing. They're just basically interested in the topic of Skinwalker Ranch or things similar to it, the phenomenon itself, and they're alone. And venues like this give them a chance to actually meet other people, especially on the subreddit. Subreddit's a great place where people can meet each other. And we see a lot of those conversations going on Reddit, and people they're not aware of it, right? They just watch the show. Maybe they come to the Reddit, but they don't really think, hey, I could actually, maybe do some crowdsourcing. First of all, get to know other people, but then, help try to figure some of this stuff out. Now, a lot of that crowdsourcing actually happens on the insiders group, right? Because they have a Discord. That wasn't really clear in the interview, that they have a Discord server where they have a lot of channels where a lot of people can say a lot of things, and they are getting to know each other. They're getting to know people in their own areas. And they're not alone anymore. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah. For people who just chime in real quick on the Discord, for people who aren't familiar with Discord, not only do you have text channels, but you have the ability to start a voice or video conversation with another member, and other people, depending on how you set that up, can join in. And frequently when I go on the Insiders Discord, there'll be a group of 5 or 10 people just hanging out, chatting, talking about what's on the live stream cameras, or things related to the show, or just chatting socially.
Yeah. And I think some people thought that we were recommending the insiders group because we were getting paid off to do that. And, this is some kind of evil partnership or whatever. Our partnership is we actually do want to promote the insiders group because people get benefit from it. It's not for everybody. If you don't really give much care about the show, why would you spend $10 a month? But if you're into the show, $10 a month, you get all those chips and salsa. You get 4 chips and salsa during the month because they have a show after every show airs on the History Channel.
Explain what those are.
Chips and salsa is where the team actually gets together with a bowl of chips and salsa They go live every Thursday after an episode airs, and they just answer people's questions, give their own comments about what they did and didn't like about the show. They explain all the things that were missing in the show as well. Some people are frustrated they have to pay $10 a month to get that information, but I think it's worth it. I understand where the money's going. It's helping contribute to the platform, covering all the costs associated with the actual Insiders program itself. So yeah, this isn't a paid promotion. It never will be. We're just doing this because we think it's cool. So, but people who don't go into the Insiders group, if they're just casual users of the forum, they can still participate in the crowdsourcing we do. Quite often, someone will throw out a topic, and some expert in the field will just show up, right, and answer questions about it. And the Reddit forum is a fantastic place to contribute what you know about a specific subject, and get to know other people. It's really cool. It's really, really cool. There's a lot of opportunity there as well as we get data to farm it out to some of these groups that want to do a deep dive on it.
Yeah, I really want to talk to Brandon some more about trying to get some sort of integration between the insider group and the subreddit. Get some sort of crossover there so more people know about the insiders group, because I'm still surprised how many people don't know it even exists.
Right.
People who would otherwise join it, because they're like, wait a second, where are you getting this information? What are you talking about? It's like, oh, it's the insiders. They're like, what's the insiders? The only reason we're promoting that is because we think people will find it interesting. You just said, we are not getting anything financial out of this. I don't have books. Nothing I'm doing in any of this, because I've been a moderator on some of these subreddits, related to the topic, like the Experiencer subreddit for years. I'm not getting anything out of it. I just, I'm interested in the topic and I want to help people myself. And I have the ability to do that, and I'm taking advantage of it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people who are listening to this, we're recording this again on June 18th, 2023. And let's give them some sort of meat as well. Let's give them some things of value. What's been going on this week?
In which arena? We've got the disclosure stuff.
We just before we had the Brandon interview, we talked a whole length about the great disclosure, right? Mm-hmm. Are there any updates there?
Oh yeah. That is gaining steam rapidly. Other whistleblowers are coming forward. We've now got additional journalists who, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Scheffenberg, I want to say, and I'm sorry, I'm probably getting the name wrong, on Twitter. But he's a journalist, and he has talked to some of the sources that David Grush talked to, the whistleblower. People who say they have seen the craft with their own eyes. They talked with him, and he said there's a possibility that they may actually come forward publicly. And so we've got a number of additional whistleblowers who are now coming forward and saying, I saw this, connected to what David Grush saw, or I saw these other things that were going on, entirely different. This is through Stephen Greer also had another press event, and he had some whistleblowers there, some people who said they testified under oath to members of Congress. So there's a lot more stuff coming out, and it's all backing up Grush's claims. So far, all of it. Pardon me, my cats are having a disagreement in the background. So that's happening. Congress is still, some of the members of Congress are like, oh, we definitely need to get to the bottom of this. They can still sweep it under the rug. But I'm more optimistic than I was the last time we talked about it. Honestly, it really looks like it's gaining steam.
Yeah, there's no going back at this point. They can't unsee or untestify what they've said. I don't know how you put this back in the box. And so something's building. We we asked that about to Brandon and Erik, and they didn't seem to think that there was anything big coming up anytime soon. At least they didn't have that sense. But I'm not sure exactly how much in tune they are with the greater community of what's going on. I would assume that Brandon would be in contact with a lot of people on the inside. He's someone that they could confide in. I'm sure he hears things.
Well,
Um,
I think it was interesting that he had a skeptical view, right? Because a lot of people are just like, oh, these guys are all, they're all just true believers and they'll believe anything, and they just jump to these wild conclusions. But he's going, we need to see the data. That's what we need to see from people like Rush. We've got to see the data before we're going to embrace this. At least that was what Brandon was saying. Um,
yeah, we need to see the data. We need hard evidence for it. It goes back to something that you require on the forum. What we require is if when people make claims that they need to provide evidence. We just ask for evidence, right? Um, we've
yeah,
gotten some accusations that, as we described how we moderate the forum, that what we really do is we squelch all skepticism. Do you
which
feel like
is
that's what you're doing? Do you feel like you're
I,
getting rid of skepticism?
the majority of the posts on the subreddit are skeptical posts. I mean, anybody can go and look at that right now. Just pull them up. The majority of the posts are skeptical. They're not being deleted. Um, the comments that are usually removed are from people who are being rude, um, or people who just, for whatever reason, they're making accusations that they can't back up, like it's all fake, or these people are lying. That's a big one. These guys are liars. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Like, if you can back that up, then, we can talk about it. Let me give you an example. Somebody made a post regarding the last episode of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. And in part of that, they were flying a drone. And somebody said, one of the motors is missing off this drone. That could account for the wonky flight pattern that was going on. And there was some discussion about that, and people were like, well, now hold on a second. How could you tell? Like, what's your evidence on this? And he said, well, I got a screenshot. When it's sitting on the blanket, there's a motor missing. And I came back and I said, the problem is that we know the way they have technical difficulties and things, sometimes they'll shoot things and they'll put them in out of sequence. They may have said, look, we need a shot of this thing taking off. Can you stick it on the blanket and we'll get a video of it? And I made that comment and somebody came back and said, yeah, but actually the guy is added to it and he's got screenshots of it in flight. He's linked to the video of it in flight and it is missing the motor. And he's right. That post isn't getting removed. I'm like, great, you made the claim. And crucially, he didn't say, this is proof they're faking it. Now, some of the people are trying to push it that direction, but the OP is just like, this could explain the wonky behavior. Absolutely. It can 100% explain the wonky behavior of that drone. Why did they not catch that the motor was missing ahead of time? That's a very good question. It's not proof that they're faking it. And so that's a leap. But we can absolutely talk about the fact that why didn't they catch it? Why didn't they notice that? Because that's an important detail there.
It is. It is. I haven't been able to watch it yet. It's not on Amazon yet, so I haven't seen it. How are you watching it?
You can get some of the episodes on Apple TV. You can download and purchase them right away. Sometimes if it's not available on the platform that I'm watching, sometimes you can find it other places.
Just do a Google search and you can find it.
You can find it other places. We're not allowed to have people post links to alternative viewing platforms on the subreddit by Reddit's terms of service, and subreddits have gotten shut down for allowing that stuff to happen. Why others don't is a mystery, but I don't want to play with the powers that be on that. So I just have to remove direct links to that stuff without comment. But when people are saying, oh, do a search on such and such, and you might be able to find it. I've left those. People DM. There are other ways to see it because a lot of people are trying to watch it legitimately and they can't access it. They're out of the country or it's not showing up on their platform for some reason. There does seem to be some issues with that right now.
So is it any good?
It's interesting. Yeah. It's got promise, but it's the format for all of these kinds of shows is just not ideal. They trying to, because now they're investigating other locations for one episode. They'll go to a place, they'll try and investigate, some of the most wild claims. They'll be like, wow, this is really interesting. Okay, gotta go. And then they leave. And that was really what happened in that episode was they found some odd stuff with magnetometer readings on the property. This was at Mount Wilson, which
Yeah.
was another site that Robert Bigelow had been investigating. And, there were rumors about buried spaceships, or I think there's a rumor about a buried spaceship on pretty much every property. But they were like, okay, well, what's the most credible evidence you have? We'll go investigate those locations. And they were like, this is odd. There's some weird stuff here. So it does have some promise, but I think really they need to spread these locations out over multiple episodes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I alerted Brandon to another location that I think he would have tremendous interest in. And I'm hoping that that turns into something. I don't know if I should talk about it here or not. I think we'll wait. We'll wait, but maybe something will come of that. And I hope it does because I want to talk about it more. It's really interesting.
It's a real site. It's a real location.
It is a place that I found out about separately, and I was like, this is insane. This has got to be fake. This has got to be BS. And I did my due diligence on it as best as I could, short of traveling to the location. And even to the point of the person that I was communicating with, we tried to get scientists on site. Like he was open to it. I reached out to some high caliber people. They were just like, we don't have the time or the budget to go on site. We want to do stuff in a lab that we can replicate and publish papers on, was what these people were saying. So it is a challenge, even when you find a place like Skinwalker Ranch, trying to get scientists there is not as easy as people think it is. But this place is over the top. Like every day there is measurable paranormal phenomenon occurring. And that's why I'm like, Brandon, I think you should check this out. It's worth your time.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So our next plan is to get a second interview with Erik and with Brandon. But I'd like to have
Yes.
you spend time with Erik and do a one-on-one with him.
I've already reached out to Erik. He graciously gave me his phone number and I called him. And so, we're gonna be in the phone tag stage for a while. He's a busy guy.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, he was eager to talk. So we're gonna try and get a more technical conversation going on. Either just the two of us or, with you involved there as well. Hopefully we'll see how it pans out. But we'll get something.
I think it would be fun to see you guys do a one-on-one. And I want to hit up Brandon on some of this stuff. Because it doesn't go away. Because there's holes in what's been said. You know what I mean? It's not, I
Oh
don't think
yeah.
he's cleared up everything that he needs to clear up.
He really should release some of the paperwork. I know he's like, nobody else has to do this kind of stuff. Why should I have to do this? Because once you do it, you don't have to keep messing with it, you know? And it wouldn't hurt him to just make these papers available showing, the document, show me the data on the claims that he was making about how it's organized and everything. I trust him. I have no reason. Nobody else who's investigated him, people who really want to drag his name through the mud, they have investigated him on this stuff and they haven't been able to come up with anything that they could use other than, oh, he trademarked it as covering like magazines and things. if that's the boldest accusation you can make, there's not much evidence of any shenanigans going on, but it wouldn't hurt him to just make that stuff available and put it to rest.
Yeah, he could be coming. He could be more forthcoming with data, perhaps. But at the same time, I sort of understand what he's going through right now. What he says makes sense.
That like nobody else has to put up with this kind of nonsense.
Well, not just that, but it's a distraction at this point to try to give raw data to people that are just pseudo skeptics that are just along for the ride.
Oh, I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about like the way the business was organized, adamantium,
Oh, how he set
that
everything
kind of
up.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. Because that is another distraction as well. People are constantly, the accusation that it's all about the money, and it's like, if it was about the money, Brandon would not be giving the money away. It's that simple. You don't give away money if it's about money. Period. It's a ridiculous accusation. It's another reason why we're like, look, if you can come up with some data to support your claims that that counter his claims, then fine. But as it stands now, we're going with that because it's getting old to just bring that up all the time.
It's interesting that you can completely derail someone, completely discredit them just by saying, well, they're in it for the money. Just call them a grifter, and the label will stick. And somehow that completely destroys anything you can say because you're in it for the money, right? But everybody's getting paid one way or another. Is Stephen Greenstreet a grifter because he gets paid for doing his videos?
No, he's probably a grifter for other reasons.
Well, this whole
I'm,
grifter thing. I mean,
I'm
what
kidding.
is
I'm kidding.
what does the word grifter even mean? Does it mean you're
Uh,
not doing anything? You're just like feeding off other people? Does grifter mean you're taking advantage of people's interest in something to make money? Because
yeah,
we
but it
see that
involves
everywhere.
fraud. Yeah, no, the thing about a grifter is it involves fraud.
It's
So
deception.
it's lying and deceit in relation to making money. Just simply publishing a book about a topic is not grifting. Going to a paid event like Phenomicon is not grifting. If they were going there and then lying about everything, that would be very different.
Right. Right. And people have even accused us of that. And how do you make it go away when it's not true? I think you don't.
I know. I mean, mostly I ignore it. The reason I have to shut it down on the subreddit, I've done so much research into, well, first of all, how to try to, like run a social media platform like this, not like I'm running Reddit, but, being in charge of the subreddits um, is a tremendous amount of work. And in order to keep discourse civil, you have to have a heavy hand. Like there've been so many research papers published, by legitimate scientists and researchers about this topic. And they say all it takes is just a little bit of rudeness and it spreads like a virus. Like it brings the worst out of people. And it's just like, we got to try and limit it. I don't like having to do it. And so I ask people, look, we've tried to make the rules as easy to follow as possible and as friendly as possible. Please try and just stick to the rules. I'm not telling you can't talk about these topics. I'm just saying do them in a specific way. Be polite. Don't call people names. If asked, be able to provide some sort of source to back up your claim. These don't feel like huge asks for me. But the people who pushed back the hardest were the ones who seemed to be unable to comply anywhere. Like you look at their post history, and they're and a lot of them end up getting removed by Reddit shortly after I ban them because they're trolling all over the place. So yeah, I didn't just come up with these things arbitrarily. Like there's a lot of thought about how do we keep discourse? How do we promote good conversation? A place where people enjoy themselves as opposed to battling, which is a lot of what the internet has become. You go online and everything is a fight. Everywhere it's a fight. Except for, like the experiencer subreddit. I got to say, we rarely have to remove that kind of stuff. And it's because we have some pretty strict rules about behavior, and we rule it with an iron fist. It's not just me, it's all of the moderators on there. And when we don't let that stuff take hold, it makes a huge difference. And people who subscribe to that subreddit love it. They tell us how much they appreciate it and how great it is. And there's fantastic conversation that happens on there. There's some definitely weird stuff going on, but that's the nature of the topic.
Yeah.
And so we want to try and get some of that on the Skinwalker Ranch forum. Some of the rules have to be different. We can't say no debunking. I wouldn't do that. It's a different subreddit.
Right. And it fosters participation. Right. I think we get quite a
genuine participation.
Yeah, we get quite a few people actually post. We get a lot of interaction on the Skinwalker subreddit.
Mm-hmm.
People actually post because they're not going to get slapped down. And let's face it, we have some really stupid things happen too, stupid questions, but people are respectful and help them out and explain things to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We usually give the users time to, if somebody is breaking the rules but doesn't look like they're trying to cause trouble, they're just, they're new to the topic, or they haven't looked at the sidebar, they haven't checked the rules for whatever reason. We try and give the other users time to, help them out before we step in, unless it's really egregious. And they do. The users are great.
Yeah, they are. We're kind of like without a lot of steam today. Things are just kind of chill, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, I think there's so much going on. And the subreddits that I've been moderating, including Skinwalker Ranch, are really busy. I've been involved in a lot of discussions on RUFOs. There's a lot of people experiencing ontological shock in relation to what's going on with disclosure. And they're posting about it on our subreddit, the Experiencer subreddit. They're posting about it on our UFOs. And they're like, guys, I'm starting to think that aliens may be real. And like, we don't know anything about them. And some of them are apparently malevolent, and we can't do anything to stop them. And I can't sleep, and I'm freaked out. And what does this mean for me and my family? And so, I've written some posts to try and educate people, because that really helps reduce fear when people have a kind of a better idea of what's going on. Reaching out to people one-on-one. I've been busy, like my hands are claws because I use my phone generally to do all of my social interactions, because I can't sit at a computer very much.
Those long posts that you do are all off your phone?
They're off my phone.
Oh, and my gosh.
I try and dictate, but man, my vocabulary is broader than Siri's. And I spend so much time kind of trying to edit her stuff that I just end up typing them out. So yeah, like really, I'm like, my hands are nubs at this point. And I'm energetically depleted. So yeah, I'm a little low on energy today, but there's still good stuff to talk about, because there is a lot of things going on. And we could dive into any one of the aspects of disclosure that we haven't talked about, like the Wilson Davis memo. I don't think we've talked about a lot.
So maybe we do touch on that, because Brandon mentioned that in the interview, that he believes that memo was absolutely real and represents what it says it represents. And it's pretty crazy. I haven't given it much credibility or thought. It just seemed like it was bogus from the very beginning to me. My BS detector, but I know you believe it. Brandon believes it. And the evidence that's coming out now, all of it supports the memo, but the memo's been around forever. So what does the
It's
memo
been
say?
around for a long time. So the history of the Wilson Davis memo, it was a document that was purporting to be a transcript of a conversation between Dr. Erik Davis, Erik W. Davis, who is a longtime government researcher, a scientist. I think he's a theoretical physicist, I believe. He's got a doctorate in physics, something. And he's done a lot of contract work for the government related to UAP. And rumors have been as well that he is one of the whistleblowers that came forward to Congress about the crash retrieval programs. I think it's important to note that. And so it's supposedly a transcript of a conversation between him and Admiral Thomas Wilson. Now, at the time, Admiral Wilson was in charge of all of the special access programs that were being run. And he was supposed to have access to all of them. Like, he was the head of oversight on these. And so if he asked, he was supposed to get information on it. Well, some people came to him, including the astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who's now passed, and said, look, we've got some pretty credible evidence that the government does have a secret UFO crash retrieval program, and you're in a position to be able to ask about it. And you know some people that are vouching for this. Oak Shannon was one of the names. Would you mind looking into this? And he was like, you know what? Yeah, okay. I'm willing to poke around a little bit. Well, he did. And then he came and he sat down in a parking lot behind a building in Las Vegas with Erik Davis and proceeded to explain that he had finally tracked down this mysterious program and demanded access. And they sat down with him, a few of the people from it, and said, listen, we've got what's called a bigot list, which is, who is allowed to have access to these programs. That's the name that they use on all of these programs, a bigot list, BIGOT. And they're like, you're not on it. The president isn't on it. We've got about 14 people that are allowed to have access to this. And he was like, well, okay, fine. You're not going to give me access. I mean, I'm supposed to have access, but, I want to know, is this a crash retrieval program? And they said, yeah, it is. They're like, well, we're willing to confirm that. It is a UFO crash retrieval program. We've had these things. We've got a number of them. We've been studying them for a very long time. And we haven't been able to get anywhere in terms of figuring it out. And we also have some bodies. And they were like, and that's all we're going to tell you. So toodle on and don't come back. And he went back to his superiors and he was furious that he was being, that this was being kept secret, first of all, and second, that he was not given access. And his superiors were like, yeah, okay, yeah, we know. And you got to stop asking about it, or, you're going to get busted. You're going to get demoted. Like, don't pursue it. Oh, and by the way, abductions aren't real. They just kind of threw that in there. He didn't ask. They just sort of like threw that in there. Abductions aren't real. And so this transcript ended up in the estate of Edgar Mitchell. And when he passed away, it was released. It ended up getting out. When that happened, a bunch of people were like, we've known about this, including Richard Dolan, the well-known UAP investigator. So we've known about this document. We've seen it. It's been floating around for years, but we weren't allowed to talk about it because we knew it was real. We've talked to people involved and we knew it was real. And I think I can just, since I'm not one of those people, I can say Erik Davis was the one that all these people knew, and he had confirmed it. Now, he was interviewed by a number of people, including Stephen Greenstreet, who asked him straight up, is it real? And his response was, note to head movement, I am not allowed to talk about classified programs. I can't confirm or deny. And that was pretty much what he did. And he was he could have said it's all bullshit, which is what he has said many times about other things that he was asked about. He's very open and honest, Erik Davis is, about the things that he's allowed to say. But on this, he wouldn't confirm or deny. And some people went to Admiral Wilson and asked him, and he's like, "Oh, it's BS. It never happened. It's all nonsense." Well, now with everything coming out in Congress, it sounds like they're talking about trying to depose Admiral Wilson and bring him back in and say, "Listen, the cards are on the table. You gotta tell us what the truth is on this." And so this document is out there describing this. It's been entered into the congressional record because it was brought up during one of the hearings. That doesn't validate the document as being true. But everyone who is familiar with the document, who has access to the classified research and the program stuff, they're all going, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure this document is legitimate. It's an accurate accounting of what happened."
And Brandon believes that document. So he believes, so that means he believes that there are actual craft in possession of the government.
And we didn't get a chance to ask him why he believes it. I'm sure Brandon has connections we don't know about. Knowing that he's just like, I want to see the data. I'd be surprised if a transcript was enough data for him, because it's basically no different than what David Grush is providing, even though he did it under oath, and this was not under oath, this document. But he says he believes it. I'm one of those people who I'm like, yeah, I pretty strongly believe it, but I could still be persuaded it's disinformation, or it was lies that were told to Admiral Wilson, or lies that were told to Erik Davis. Again, it would be disinformation. I could be persuaded of that, but I think with everybody who's validated this one way or another, I think it wasn't just a TV script, as John Greenwald has speculated.
Right. What's Mick West's take?
I don't know his specific take on it, but I just knowing his response to a lot of other things, I'm sure it's not backed up by anything. It's probably just fiction. That's been his response to David Grush as well, is, well, he's either lying or he's just repeating lies that were told to him. And it's interesting that, Mick West used to be one of these people who's like, we don't have enough information to form an opinion on this. But over time, he's moved more into the just, it's all BS camp, which is not great for him, because he's supposed to be a skeptic. That's not a skeptical view. When if you don't have any evidence to back up a claim that something is false, you shouldn't be making the claim. You should be maintaining the view of, we don't know. It would be fine if he said, I think it's probably BS, but we don't know. But that's not really what he's saying anymore.
No, he knows it's BS.
He believes 100% it's BS, but he hasn't provided any evidence to back that up.
Yeah, and they're getting really vocal about this big disclosure. It's like
there's a lot riding on it.
Yeah, and so they just want to shut it down now, and they're just insisting there's no way it's true, discrediting everybody that comes forward. And I'm like, why are you guys making such a big deal out of this when we don't know yet? And we're gonna know. It's coming to a head.
So there was a massive influx of users, new users to the UFOs subreddit, and a number of subreddits after the whistleblower came out. And these people were all repeating the same mantra, which was either, David Grush has no credibility, which was easily disproven, and they abandoned that argument. David Grush is not providing any evidence to back up his claims, which is now also, people are like, hold on a second, like, he testified under oath, and the people are taking it seriously. But David Grush also said there's a massive disinformation campaign that is being run by the US government to shut all this down, to discredit it, to ridicule it. When I come across some of these accounts, and I look through their post history, there are tools out there, publicly available tools. One of them is called Reddit Metis, Metis. You can run it on a user account. It takes the available public information and it does analytics on it, data analytics. And it gives you information about, what topics are they posting on. One of the more interesting pieces of information is a heat map that shows their post activity over time. And what you see with a lot of these people is that they've had accounts for 5 or 6 years that were largely inactive, an occasional post months apart. And then within the past, few weeks or months, they suddenly became active and spend 100% of their time posting skeptical stuff to our UFOs, mostly. And the amount of posts that are being generated and the kind of sleep-wake schedule for these people indicates that they're not organic users. They're spending 24 hours, in some cases, 24 hours a day. In other cases, it's from like 9 to 5 kind of thing. And then sometimes the sleep break shows that these users are in other countries, Russia or China. There's a lot of reason to be suspicious about some of these accounts. I have never banned a user based on anything that I've gotten from Reddit Metis or anything like that, because I have no proof. Never banned a user for that. I have reported many users to the appropriate mods of various subreddits to say, this person, maybe you should do a little digging. They might need to be on your radar. Our UFOs has posted some, analyzation that they've done. And they're like, yeah, there is a major disinformation campaign. And 99.9% of these people are hardcore skeptics, is how they present. They're not posting as the hardcore believers generally. And that breeds a lot of mistrust. And it's really problematic. We got to be very careful about accusing anybody of being a shill. But we also have to be, we shouldn't just be trusting everything that gets posted based on our beliefs and our bias and just go, well, they're saying what I already agree with, so I'm going to back them up. I'm going to, they get my upvote or whatever. It's worth your time if you're going to engage with somebody on Reddit. Just take a look through their post history and see if they seem like a reasonable person before you start throwing them upvotes. And if you really see something suspicious, report it to the mods of the subreddit. Don't report it to Reddit, by the way. When you file a report, you can file a report and it goes to the admins, or it'll go to the subreddit. If you file too many reports with the admins, they'll warn you, and then they might shut down your account and ban you for harassment, or reporting misuse. So that can happen. So just telling users to be careful. In general, just, be thoughtful about what's going on. This is a complicated topic. And there's a lot of twists and turns, and it's really hard to know what the truth is. And, even David Grush is like, man, this could be a disinformation campaign I'm being targeted with. But if so, it's incredibly complex and incredibly well done. But even he's like, it could be. It's hard. It's really hard this is a difficult topic to be invested in one way or another.
Why would the government go to such lengths to create these false stories about craft if they didn't really have them? And it's just a disinformation campaign. They were behind the Davis memo. They planted this information to see who was going to link it when there's absolutely no truth to it. And they're just covering up a normal crash retrieval program for other nations' aircraft. Right? What if it's all a lie? What would be the motive? Because you're bringing attention to the topic. They don't want anyone even talking about UAPs. So
right, they've proven that.
So why create something that's going to create a whole bunch of talk about? I think it's out of control. I don't think I don't think it's fake.
Well, I mean,
Doesn't
I have
make
my own
sense.
reasons not to think it's fake, but just based on the information that the average person has, I think they should be able, if they take the time to investigate it without bias, with an open mind, I think they'll come to the conclusion that there's something going on that the government is not in charge of, whatever that is. And if it, as people have said, if it's our adversaries, that's terrifying because it indicates that they have technical abilities that are not next generation. They're like next generation. They would be so far advanced that whoever gets this technology rules the planet, should they wish to
Right.
do so.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And the
Yeah.
Tic Tac was seen in 2004.
Yeah.
That was almost 20 years ago. So what's been going on since then?
Well, we know that they're still apparently seeing craft daily, all over the place. These craft are frequently associated with nuclear sites, so nuclear power plants, missile silos, submarines. Um, Apparently, it's been hinted that the government has used nuclear weapons as bait to attract UFOs. They're really keeping tabs on that for some reason. Um, how they're able to track it and know what's going on. The capabilities of these things are astounding. They potentially shut our missiles down at some missile silos, took the
Yeah.
whole thing offline and then brought them back up, or in Russia purportedly activated them as if they were going to launch them and then took them back down again.
Right.
Just kind of like they're just showing like, hey, look what we can do. We could do this if we wanted to. There's a lot of different reasons they might be trying to hide it. Another is some people are like, well, look, if they have reverse engineered the simply the power required to operate these craft, assuming that they operate within the laws of physics as we know them, um, then that power would solve the world's energy problems. It would turn it into a Star Trek utopia. Like we would have no need to be producing pollution at all. Um, Research could grow at an astounding pace, um, but it would destroy the economy because our economy is based on oil primarily. Um,
And scarcity of energy.
yeah,
And if you had unlimited energy, you're also inviting a lot of industrial output. Factories don't have to close. You give that kind of power to industry, and
oh yeah,
they'll just increase all manufacturing.
the costs of manufacturing drop tremendously.
Right.
Um, the limiting factor then becomes materials.
Right.
But what would we be able to do with recycling if there was unlimited energy available? Like, how could that advance?
Well, and you could
Uh,
desalinate too.
yeah. So, really, if in fact we've reverse engineered this, even to the point of exploiting the available power supplies that are in these UFOs, if they have that technology and they've withheld it, it's the largest crime against humanity ever. Um, and I can see why people who are taking advantage of that would go to any extent they could to keep the secret, keep that from coming out. But I
Right.
worry about like, well, okay, so let's say they disclose, yeah, this is real. What what does that mean? What else do they have? What else have they been doing with this? Like what other how would they be exploiting these technologies? What other things could they be doing?
Making other
Um,
craft.
Potentially making other craft. One of the whistleblowers that was at Greer's event, who claims he testified again under oath, said that he came across a UFO in Sumatra after the Sumatran earthquake. He was a Marine. He was deployed there to help with first aid and such support. And they came across a UFO that was being loaded with weapons by the military, by some covert team who then took them at gunpoint and were like, we could kill you guys. We should kill you guys. We're going to let you go. Don't say anything. And it was a football field sized UFO, loaded full of weapons, went up in the sky, took off. Where are those going? What are they doing with that, if that's real? I don't know. Speculation is all we can do, but there's no point because we just don't have enough data yet. It's easy to tell really scary stories, conspiracies, effectively. I'm like, I'm not going to go there. I don't want to waste my time thinking about it. We just got to wait and see what comes out. Hope for the best. But we're at a turning point, right? Like the world could go in a dramatically new, better direction.
Right. That's what the
not too distant future.
That's what the great disclosure is all about, is its impact on people. It's going to impact almost everybody, whatever it is.
I mean, do you have any thoughts about this?
The great disclosure?
Because I know this is something you've given a lot of thought about in terms of how this can affect society. And
well, I'm looking beyond just, UAP disclosure. I think that's imminent, but as I've said before, there's a lot of potential disclosures on the horizon, right? And one of them is we have a surveillance society. We have a police state, but we also have a surveillance state where corporations and governments are recording and monitoring and collecting, storing, uploading everything we say and do in the digital realm. And they've got it categorized. How voyeuristic are they with that? How often are they just like following people's lives? Like, famous people, right? Or they can just like listen in their phone 24/7 if they wanted to. We have that apparatus in place. We just have not been exposed to it. Another form of disclosure I can imagine is that information gets disclosed. We find out how much information they have on us, and maybe even have access to our information or other people's information. A great information leak, a great information disclosure. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. On a massive scale. What if we just start learning the truth about things? What if the truth just starts coming out about the world? What really goes on behind the scenes? What people are really up to? You know what I'm saying? Because it seems to me that there are people on this planet right now that have that visibility. They know what people really say on their cell phones, what they really look at on the internet, what they're really saying with each other in their, kitchens, bedrooms, whatever. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
I've been to China and I've seen it firsthand in China. In China, as you're driving along, they've got these wires across the street that flash, and it just takes photographs of everybody's license plate, identifies every face that's in the car that it can, and they know where you're traveling around the city. One of the guys I was with, his wife used to work in the office that does that, and they're actually tracing people where they go. And they just collect it all, but they don't really do anything with it unless someone commits a crime, unless there's, someone suspects some kind of a government conspiracy, anti-government conspiracy. Then they just go look at the data, like the history, and say, okay, well, who walked in that building last week? Let's follow them around, They do that in China. So when are we going to find out they've been doing it here? Will it ever come out?
It kind of did with Snowden. Like,
well,
Snowden
he
pulled
said
back the curtain and was like, they're collecting. The NSA has been illegally spying on Americans and collecting all of this information.
Yes.
And the official response to that was to be like, oh, we got to get that guy. That guy's a traitor.
It was never denied. It was never denied. They did what they could to get a hold of him. It was never denied. But we haven't really seen the ramifications of that.
There haven't been any ramifications. That's the problem.
Not
I think
yet.
people are so inured to all of that. We're just so used to it. The idea that everybody's collecting all this information on us, there's nothing we can do about it. We're helpless, and we kind of are. If you want to participate, unless you want to run off and be Amish, um, if you want to participate in our society, you're going to be tracked. They're going to be keeping tabs on you.
Yes, and they're going to know your life story
They
better
know
than anybody.
everything about you, absolutely everything about you.
Right,
There was
right.
that. Do you remember that story about the father who started getting stuff in the mail for pregnancy? And he was like, "What the hell? Like, my wife's not pregnant. Why are we getting this stuff in the mail?" And then it was addressed to his daughter, and it was like stuff from Target advertising diapers and baby food and things. Well, they were monitoring her activity and just knew that based on certain, macros or whatever, chances are she was pregnant. And they figured it out before she did.
Was
Because,
she
she said she was craving certain things or whatever it was. And it was like she started getting this stuff. And then she found out shortly afterwards that she was pregnant. But the machine knew that she was pregnant before she did.
right, right, right. Well, all of this data, it's going to be added into machine learning algorithms as well. LLMs. A lot of them are going to get this data. As soon as we upload this to YouTube, within a matter of seconds, it's converted everything we've said into text for the captioning. That happens in a matter of seconds. Then they look at it and they analyze it for all kinds of things. What are we talking about? When should we show this video on YouTube? There's all kinds of algorithms that use that text of what we actually said, right? Well, that's for eternity. That's up there forever. And at some point, some kind of bot, probably from Google, is going to go through and it's going to read all the text of every single YouTube ever uploaded to YouTube, right? As a language model. It's going to happen. People like you
I
and
think
I
it's
are,
already happened.
well, it has. It has. But if you go look at ChatGPT and try to get it to talk about you or put my name in, nothing comes up.
Sure.
It's unaware of the two of us, right? Even though we may have had our name on some websites or whatever, had some articles posted online. I'm talking about in the future where you can just ask ChatGPT, tell me about Charles, and it just gives the bio. It gives your bio,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And feeds up photos as well. But what if it's not your public persona, but your private persona? The people you've been talking to. There was that website maybe like 10 years ago that it was like how to have an affair, how to cheat on your wife. Do you remember that? And there were all these guys that went on that site, created
Oh,
profiles,
yeah. Yeah.
and
Okay.
they were flirting with the women that were on there and arranging to have an affair nearby. It turned out that I think like 90% of the men they were talking to women, 90% of those women were fake. They were just chatbots. And it was all about getting to know them before you actually met them, right? But they were not a real person you could ever meet.
Yeah.
But what the scandal was someone cracked the website and released all the names and contact information of all the men that were on the site.
Yeah.
And shit hit the fan.
Right.
Right.
Because they were political figures, religious leaders. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And people were able to just look it up and see who was doing it. So that's just one example of what if the truth about everybody came out? What if? Or it's starting to be used, that private data is being used for large language models that are going to blow us away because they know us.
Have you watched Westworld?
Yes, I've watched Westworld.
Yeah. So
Yes,
the last season, that was, oh, I don't want to give any spoilers to
it's
people.
all about the data.
It's about the data. Yeah. Just what you were talking about. I'll leave it at that. A great show, by the way. One of the smartest shows out there, I think. Um, and very accurate. Like, that's not the distant future, it's the now. So, circling back, to disclosure, this is what I was like. Some of the other stuff that's going to come out surrounding this is more than just about UFOs. It's about what has the government been doing? What are the people in power? How have they been maintaining their power? What do they have power over? Um, what happened if this fell into the wrong hands? Gary Nolan talked about, if we cracked anti-gravity and somebody picked up a skyscraper, took it 60 miles up the atmosphere, just high enough that if you dropped it, it wouldn't burn up before it hit the ground, but it would hit terminal velocity. If you dropped a skyscraper on New York City, it'd be like detonating a nuclear bomb on the city. It would just level it. And that would, you don't even have to have anything dramatic there. It's just like if all you need is the ability to lift something up in the air, anti-gravity, And so I think my suspicion is that this is one of the reasons, the excuses they've had for not talking about this, because there's tremendous concern about how could it be used. People know this technology is available. But the thing is, we already know that there are bad actors out there. Russia has been just as heavily invested in trying to figure this out as we have. And, what if they get there first? I don't think they have. I don't think they would be doing as poorly as they are in Ukraine if they had cracked UFOs. But what if they do? What if that happened tomorrow? What if the U.S. gets a horrendous dictator installed and he gets access to these programs? So there's so many conversations that we have to have about this. It's far more than just, there's non-human intelligence out there, but that is also a very fascinating aspect of this. What does that mean? We're not alone. And it's not just gray aliens, It's not just like there's one species of alien that are here flying around in UFOs watching us. There's so many different types of non-human intelligence. The evidence is there if you study the literature. Or you and I have had experiences with some of these things where we're like, I don't know what that was, but that was something, shadow beings.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to talk about that, your shadow being sighting, or do you want to save that for another episode?
I want to save that. That's tied to a bigger story that
okay,
people aren't going to believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd rather not go into that. But yeah, I have experienced it. I know the hitchhiker effect is real. I've experienced it.
Yeah.
That's like core. I know it's real. It's not made up. It's social contagion of some kind. What I find fascinating about it is it's not just people that have had an experience on Skinwalker Ranch or off Skinwalker Ranch. They have no experience other than immersing themselves in the topic. Let's put it that way. They either really stare and get into, the live feed of the ranch, and they just like stare at it and imagine that they're on the ranch. It takes a certain kind of mentality along with immersing yourself, or binge watching the show, or reading the books, or and then these people suddenly have these effects in their own homes, especially the electronic effects, right? Things turning off and on, not functioning, batteries dying. Some people get messages on their TVs. Their closed captioning will wig out and they'll actually get some weird messages. We need to talk to Jim Segala. He was on the first season of Skinwalker Ranch. He's a scientist, and he's deep diving the hitchhiker effect probably more than anyone, because he's got actual devices measuring radiation, electromagnetic energy in people's homes that are experiencing the hitchhiker effect.
Custom built devices that he designed and manufactured.
That's right.
And he's deployed hundreds of them across the country, a lot of them in the Uintah Basin, but also outside of it, gathering data and just correlating events. And he's come up with some interesting patterns, apparently, of like spikes and particular types of radiation that precede events by like 24 hours or something. And they're like, if we see this, woo is going to happen within 24 hours. The person is going to experience some paranormal weirdness. What would that be all about? Like, why is that happening? So yeah, we definitely need to talk to him.
Yes,
I
yes.
can see myself on screen right now, and I'm like 10 seconds behind where I am. So I don't.
It's really weird how the video is acting right now.
Woo! There we go. I think
I've
I'm
had
caught
this
up.
before. I've had this before when I've talked with people online about the hitchhiker effect.
Oh
Weird stuff
yeah,
happens. And what's fascinating about it is it's obviously some real phenomenon, but it's hard to figure it out. But there's a lot of data. A lot of people have experienced this. They just don't want to talk about it.
and right, and we're not making the claim that this is, you know, a paranormal incident, but it could be.
It
That's the
could have
thing.
been. It
We
could have
know
been. I
that
don't
there are
know.
paranormal incidents that are related to these topics that happen in these ways. We simply don't know how often they happen. Like it could be 100% of the time for all we know, or it could be 0.001% of the time. We need more data. But as soon as all you have to do is just acknowledge it's somewhere on that probability curve that it can happen. And it changes the picture a lot. The debunkers are like the chance is zero. It never happens. And they're wrong.
The debunkers just say it's all bullshit. There's no
Yeah.
truth to it. And Thomas Winterton had that experience with his car where the cameras went out at specific times.
Or
And
Travis Taylor.
no, this is Thomas Winterton in the
It was
winter.
Thomas?
Yes, Travis had his
Okay.
incident too, where he would unlock and stuff. What Thomas said was that he parked his car in front of his house with security cameras pointed at it. The security cameras went out at specific times, and then the windows in a locked car were lowered, and then the cameras came back on.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that one.
Yes, yes, and that's a typical hitchhiker. Yes, but Travis Taylor's had weird things where buttons switch or they don't work. He claims he's had a chicken decapitated by the
Yeah.
hitchhiker effect because the door is never supposed to come down on the head of a chicken, and this one it did. Just came down and chopped the electronic glitch. Didn't happen before, didn't happen after. They've
And
had they've
I just,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say they've had some stuff happen off the ranch, and so have insiders, and so have people. That's why when Brandon says that people are going to need therapy after watching season 4, and they're going to be really messed up. What was he talking about? And from what I can tell, it wasn't. It was sort of, it was a little bit of hype, basically, that there's not a specific thing that's going to cause people to need therapy. And if that's the case, is there any liability there? Can a television series make you sick to the point where you
Yeah.
can say, "Hey, is someone going to say that or do that?"
I think they're legally safe because this thing is not
you can't
recognized by science.
you can't legally prove the hitchhiker effect, can you?
No. It'd be like suing Satan, you know? I but I do want to say, as somebody who has also experienced what I think was the hitchhiker effect, like it matched up in a lot of ways, and has just experienced a lot of other paranormal things. One of the worst aspects of it is that you start questioning everything. Like anytime something unusual happens, you go, why did that happen? Was there, was that, did that have greater meaning? Like, is there something trying to communicate with me? Like, um, am I supposed to pay attention? Like, is something going on? Like, is this leading to something? Like, and it can be really, really destructive. And this is one of the factors that contributes to this ontological shock that people experience, is grappling with the nature of reality. Because you get into this stuff and you're like, oh man, there is something going on here that we just is completely outside of our understanding. And it's not just events, it's the ability for the events to happen. Like the way reality is structured, it's just not what we think it is. And I'm not here to tell anybody how that's structured. I don't know. I've been asking. Matter of fact, I just got an email back from Dr. Dean Radin.
Yeah,
I don't know
Dean.
if you're familiar with Dr. Radin. Yeah,
Oh, Dean Radin.
parapsychologist.
Absolutely, good old
Yeah.
Dean.
I had emailed him a while ago Um, I've emailed him a few times um, about technical, about things, important things. I'll leave it there. But this one was just kind of a personal one. I was like curious if you've seen sort of a theory of everything that enamors you. There was three questions. That was one of them. The second was, what were his thoughts on cubism, the quantum theory of cubism,
Mm-hmm.
QBISM for people who don't know. And then the third one was if he had a favorite parapsychology study, either his or someone else's. And he wrote back. It had been weeks. I just kind of wrote it off. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm getting literally hundreds of emails a day now. I felt bad for emailing the guy my, short questions. But he took the time to respond. And what he said was, no, he hasn't seen a theory of everything that he likes because none of them are able to predict things that haven't happened, things that we don't already know. He hasn't seen one that can do that. Cubism falls within that to him. And then the last one was a study. And actually, I can send it a link to you or something. You could put it in the show notes, maybe. And it had to do with the observer effect and the double slit experiment.
Yeah.
And kind of proving that there really is an effect from consciousness. If you focus consciousness, you can change things in the physical world. And to anybody who's studied anything about parapsychology, this is not a new idea. And it's backed up by a tremendous width and breadth of research that's out there. People are shocked when they first find out about it. They're like, what do you mean? That our thoughts affect our reality? And the answer is yes, but we don't know what the limits to that are. And that's what everybody's going to have to grapple with as well, is your thoughts are affecting the world around you in ways that we don't know and we don't understand. Going back to the hitchhiker effect, it was Ryan Skinner who was like, the best way you can deal with the hitchhiker effect, if you think you're experiencing it, is to persuade yourself it's not real. So he's like, if you hear knocking in the walls, tell yourself it's the pipes, even if you know there's no pipes in that wall. If you hear knocking, tell yourself it's rats, even if you know there's no rats in your house. You got to not just ignore it, but persuade yourself, try and persuade yourself it's nothing paranormal. And he said that seems to be the only thing that kind of helps the hitchhiker effect to go away eventually. That was his advice.
Yeah, yeah, that's the best advice I've ever heard. They talk about exorcism, prayers, sage, burning sage, and those typically don't work for the people that try them, and it quite often makes the situation worse.
Exactly.
Because when you do those, you're putting energy into the fact that it's a real phenomenon. You're sort of validating it and recognizing it and giving it more energy by doing something like that, performing some kind of a ritual, and it actually makes it worse. Some people
And
can never get rid of it. At least they don't think they've gotten rid of it.
yeah, in some cases, you're also dealing with a conscious entity, and that kind of stuff can seemingly piss it off and anger it and make things worse.
Right,
At least
right.
it appears that way.
Well, what Jim Segal is finding is that, yes, his detector will go off sometimes a day before something happens. What we're talking about is like a shadow figure. People will feel a presence, a shadow figure will walk across the room, sometimes in broad daylight. While they're watching TV, this figure will go across. And at the same time, there was a gamma radiation spike. That's what Jim Segal is measuring, which I think is absolutely fascinating.
Oh, yeah, he's measuring all kinds of stuff. Gamma, well, various types of radiation, gamma, beta, I think alpha, electromagnetic. Um, I think he was even saying that there may be stuff in terms of potentially, gravitational detectors that are becoming available. Um, I think maybe I might be conflating something else that was out there. But yeah, they're because nobody really knows what is associated with this. It's energies that we don't recognize right now. Gamma radiation is not the power source, but it correlates with the activity. But there's energy involved with these things that is it's in a scale we have no idea how to measure it. We don't know what it is.
Right. But he's measuring those kinds of things when incidents happen. Objects are thrown across the room. He's getting spikes at that same moment, which is fascinating. But
Yeah.
not it doesn't always happen. It doesn't always measure something when something happens in the house. And so, like you said, it's sometimes 24 hours ahead of time. So it's still a mystery, but it's something it's real. It can be measured.
And gamma radiation is one of those things, you don't get spurious measurements typically. Because the way the detectors work, you're not going to you might get false negatives very rarely, but you won't get false positives because it requires a boost in available energy. Something has to produce that energy to trigger the detector. I have a Geiger counter, which monitors 24/7. I had it here in my study. A bunch of weird stuff had been going on in this room. And I had the Geiger counter in here in relation to a video I was doing. And it went off at like 3 o'clock in the morning one night. I got up and I came in here to see what the alarm was, what it was reading. By the time I got there, it was gone. But I looked to see if there were any gamma ray bursts or anything that could correlate with it, and there was nothing. I still don't know what set it off. Nothing should have set it off. But that's the thing. I'm like, I'm the guy who wants to measure everything. I've built detectors and things using a Raspberry Pi and what's called a sense hat, to measure electromagnetic changes or barometric pressure or whatever. And infrared cameras and all kinds of gewgaws. Because I want to try and understand this stuff.
But you really haven't gotten anything conclusive.
I have not gotten a smoking gun, and nobody else has either. I've gotten a lot of really weird stuff that I've tried to debunk and haven't been able to. I sent you one of them. It was a video of some weird kind of orb floating things. When you first look at it, you're like, oh, it's dust or pollen in the being lit up by the IR light on the camera.
Right.
I took the air filter, the HEPA filter out of my air filter and the pre-filter outside, climbed up on a ladder. I was hitting this thing. I was wafting it over towards the camera. I tried all kinds of things to replicate it, and I couldn't. You can get stuff that shows up, but it didn't look the same. And I still don't know what those were. And I'm not saying, again, it's paranormal, but it was, to me, unexplained. And I've got a lot of that kind of stuff, just minor things that I'm like, that correlated with something else, and I don't know why it happened or whatever. You can get stuff, but nobody ever seems to be able to get the smoking gun. To me, that's because it's all related to consciousness. And we're not supposed to have the smoking gun. We're not, I don't know. That starts getting into the weird stuff.
But it explains what you've been going through.
It touches on what I've been going through. It doesn't come close to explaining it. There's so much. We'll have to do some other topics. I don't want to talk about me, but I can talk about things I've experienced in relation to topics in general, such as remote viewing, precognitive stuff, mediumship. These are all topics that I think would be fascinating to talk about from a scientific perspective. Like, people don't know how much research there is out there on these things. Triple-blinded studies about mediums where they provided information that they should not have been able to provide. Peer-reviewed studies. I've experienced some of that, and I'm like, I don't, it's not the smoking gun, but the probability of guessing or just however it came across was freaking weird.
And you
Yeah.
see that on Skinwalker Ranch too. That's why you know what they're experiencing is par for the course, basically.
Yeah. It's why I am absolutely open to what they're documenting there, because I've experienced some of it myself enough to be like, oh, yeah, this is, and I've researched it thoroughly to be able to say this is in line with the literature that's available. Like, it's not like this is unique. And they're even saying that would be on Skinwalker Ranch. They're like, Skinwalker Ranch is not the only place this stuff happens. It just happens to be one of the most active. But this stuff seems to happen a lot of other places. And the more we learn about those, the better.
Right. And Skinwalker Ranch is also the most studied. They've got like 30 plus cameras, right? All those sensors. If anything's going to go off, they're going to get a lot of data on it.
I mean, as far as we know, um, Brandon has set up the most complicated paranormal research study site in the world. As far as I'm aware, I've never heard of anything that comes close to it. He has the resources to be able to put scientists on site, maybe not 24/7, but close to it. And, Robert Bigelow before him, and he did have people on site. And they were all using some of the best technology that was available at the time. And I want to point that out too, in some of the clips we see on the history show, the equipment that they're using in some of these experiments is not the equipment that they have at the command center. Erik has talked about this. They have high-end equipment. They have some custom designed and engineered equipment, cameras that have been enhanced with additional sensory ranges and things, to give them IR capability, for example. And they're catching stuff. But even with all of that, they're still like, we don't know what is going on. But I was amazed to hear them be willing to go on the record and say we think it's non-human intelligence. And for Brandon to say, I think it's malevolent.
Yeah. What does that mean? It's malevolent.
I mean, it's harmed people.
Has it really? I mean, harmed them? It
I
scared
mean,
them off. It's
Thomas Winterton was injured, in a
yes,
way that they couldn't explain.
yes, yes.
There are stories that other people have been injured. But then there's always talk about HIPAA stuff, well, we can't really get into details. Some of the ATIP research involved people who had sustained injuries in relation to seeing UAPs, and we don't know the details on that. But a lot of roads go back to Skinwalker Ranch on this. Like you can trace it back to Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes, yes. And I think we've talked about this before. The tubes that Lukatsky saw in Homestead Number One.
Right.
The,
Yeah,
the
kind of set the whole thing in motion with ATIP and OSAP.
the whole thing was because he saw those pipes in the kitchen. And it corresponded to a song. He didn't realize it at the moment, but it was Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield. And that
Which,
song is the theme song to The Exorcist.
yeah, which is, again, it's like, well, does the phenomenon know that that's the theme song to The Exorcist, or did it pluck that out of his consciousness and feed it back to him? And that's what researchers like Jacques Vallée highlight a lot, is that the phenomenon takes things out of your head and feeds them back to you in sometimes in ways it's almost like it's having fun. It's making fun of us.
Well, for it to pick the tubes that he would recognize from the song that's in The Exorcist, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's a message. It seems like it's a message at the same time. It's revealing itself. It's like, it's not just, hey, I'm here. It's more like, hey, I know about The Exorcist. And if it didn't pluck it from his head, how did it know?
Yeah. And I've honestly, I've heard these kinds of anecdotes from countless experiencers. And sometimes they don't even figure it out right away, you know? Um, they'll have an experience happen and they'll, document it, they'll talk about it, whatever. And then later they go, oh my God, I just remembered that was actually related to this thing that happened, 20 years before or something. Or somebody else will tell them and remind them, oh, don't you remember that this thing happened and this was related to that? That happens over and over and over again. There's just this connection to our awareness that, we find it in other places, remote viewing, psi, all of the psi stuff. We have these connections that to the world around us that we know are there, but we don't understand how they work. And the phenomenon seems to have these abilities in way more dramatic fashion. And so, people are like, how could it do these things? How could it have shut the missiles off? That's going to be incredibly complicated advanced technology. And I'm like, could be, or maybe it's telekinesis coupled with remote viewing. That's a far simpler explanation for me, because we know those things exist. People can do it to a small degree, especially with telekinesis, but they could do remote viewing. 65% accuracy for the CIA's program is what they got to. And that was outside of the bounds of time and space. They can see the future to some degree. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is the thing. It's like you gotta know, you gotta do such a wide breadth of investigation into these topics to start to get a foothold in kind of knowing what's really going on, or even have an inkling of it, to be able to say, oh yeah, this is a genuine thing. Like this actually kind of makes sense.
You're right. And I think for a lot of people, Skinwalker Ranch is their introduction to all of this. Mm-hmm. Somehow they get hooked on the show. Somehow they get interested in this. And it's like, is it real? Is it real? Is it not? And then they start hearing about the rest of the paranormal world and all this other stuff, and even other things that happened on the ranch. And suddenly they've gone down that rabbit hole. Right.
Yeah.
And they're sort of
Skinwalker Ranch is a rabbit hole.
It is. And it can pull you in. And the more you're interested in it, the more you're learning about other things other than Skinwalker Ranch. You can't just study Skinwalker Ranch. A study of Skinwalker Ranch makes it a study of most of these other topics. And I think Brandon realizes that he's sitting on top of this. I don't want to call it a religion, but it's a worldview that's being developed, right? He specifically says he wants to know how the world works, how the universe is put together. Those are some big topics for him to be trying to get answers to on a ranch.
Right. Yeah. He said he wanted, specifically with the ranch, he wants to know what the origin and the agenda is for the phenomenon there.
Right. And, you can only obsess so much over this non-human intelligence that potentially is either roaming on the ranch or nearby or aware of it or something, right? Is it one entity? Is it multiple entities? That's a good question. But ultimately, you're going to have to start asking the bigger questions about deity. It's going to go there.
Yeah.
At some point, people are going to start asking questions about God. It's going to be a part of that eventually. Right?
I mean, it shouldn't be off the table. Like it's so uncomfortable for people to go there. And, I'll lay my own record out on the table here. I was an atheist almost all of my life. Not raised in a religious household. My father was frankly very anti-religious. And it was only because of my interactions with the phenomenon over time that I started to go, ooh, I think there may be more. Clearly, there's things I don't understand. And some of it is pointing back to potentially the existence of a consciousness that's behind it all. And that consciousness theoretically could be called God. Now, I don't have any way to prove it um, while I'm alive.
But all of
But
your
yeah,
experiences have led you to ultimately have questions about deity.
yes,
Right.
absolutely.
I think that's eventually you're going to get there. I think everyone eventually is going to go, what's this got to do with God?
Yeah. And some of the people who already believe in God are like, oh, well, it's demons. All of this is demons. And that's hampered the research. Like people in the government tried to shut down the UAP programs because they were like, that's all, satanic. We shouldn't be looking into that.
Well, on the forum, someone claimed that Brandon Fugal was intentionally and knowingly some kind of representative of Satan, right? I don't remember
Oh,
the exact name of the
yeah.
demon. The guy had a name of a demon that he said the description of this demon matches Brandon Fugal, right?
Yeah,
And
because it digs a hole or something like that.
yeah, it's a demon that digs holes, right? And it's trying to get back to purgatory or hell or whatever. And we had to deal with that on the forum. And
Unfortunately,
this guy actually believed it and made a very strong case that everything that Brandon says and does in public, he's clearly a demon from Satan.
yeah.
And it's like it's a no-brainer. And
And I was bummed because I was like, man, he spent a lot of time putting this together. It was like we can't let people start accusing other people of being demonic.
well, and
Um,
and, and he said the same thing about the Mormon Church, that it was demonic as well, and that this whole thing is about ushering in the last days and the Antichrist, and the Skinwalker Ranch is somehow in the middle of that.
yeah,
The people in the Pentagon thought that it was all demonic, like you said.
yeah, not all of them, but enough of them.
Yeah, enough
Um,
that the funding got cut, right?
yeah.
What does it mean that it's demonic? What's Satan doing out on Skinwalker Ranch? Is it just a
Well,
distraction?
what
It's
is a
not to.
demon? Like it totally depends on what your worldview is, and a lot of people associate demons with the Bible.
Well, they're
Um,
they're evil spirits. They're like
well,
servants of Satan, right?
but they're fallen angels,
They're
aren't
fallen.
they?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it depends on your religious view, right? There's not one way to see all this, right? There's Christian, there's Protestant, there's Catholic, there's Mormon,
Yes.
there's the jinn, right? In Islam,
Yep. Yep.
it depends on what words you want to use and what kind of context you want to use it. But they all have it to some degree. Even Buddhism has tulpas. So
Yeah. Well, there's different sects of Buddhism that have some different beliefs there.
yes. But I know
Um,
that some of the tulpa ideas came from there as well, where they could actually manifest as real physical people if you put enough energy into them. There's some
well,
stories about that. So
and I know we want to at some point talk about some of my weirder experiences in this front, but I had reason to investigate what is a demon? Like, what does that mean? Because there are things out there that appear to be demonic. Like they appear to be, and I'm not using the term because I'm like, oh, the Bible's real, Christianity, whatever. I'm not a Christian. Um, but yeah, these things, and when I get into the longer story, it'll make more sense. But I had very good reason to be investigating what the hell is a demon? Like, why would demons be messing around? So there's malevolent there are malevolent things out there that want to mess with us.
there probably are. What I struggle with is the concept that just talking about them gives them power over you, it invokes it. If we talk about the Skinwalker hitchhiker effect, then it's more prevalent. It can happen. It can happen more to me. And it just seems like, why is that off the table? Why can't we just talk about it in a rational, scientific way? Even demons, because a lot of people say as soon as you start talking about demons, you're inviting them, and it's gonna, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just don't subscribe to that.
yeah,
I don't see how talking about demons is going to make demons suddenly have more power over you, or but some people believe that if you talk about them or think about them, it opens the door. right, in your life.
I feel like some of my experiences kind of back it up personally, but that doesn't mean anything to everyone else.
So when you
And
give
I
your,
don't tend to talk about my own experiences as evidence for things. I always point to what's the empirical research? What do the experts say on this? Um, my own experiences just spur me to go look at that stuff.
but did you feel that the more you looked into demons, the more, the stronger they got?
No, I didn't get that sense.
Okay.
But I do feel like if you tempt fate, sometimes you get attention from things. Um, but I don't think anybody should hide in their bedroom, with the door locked, not willing to willing to think about scary things or, bad things or whatever. We need to be able to talk about these things. I mean, the Native American culture, the Navajo culture, DNA, they say don't talk about the skinwalkers because if you do, you could attract them. You can give them power. It's just best not to discuss it. Now they know about it. They all know about it. So they talk about it amongst themselves in certain situations and circles. They're just reticent to do it in public. And I think we need to be considering those things. Like, I think we shouldn't just take folklore that's been around for thousands of years and ignore it because it's folklore. We should be like, well, why were people saying it for thousands of years? Like, what is it based off of? Because that's one of the things that I've seen is so much of the stuff like shadow beings. Um, it's like, oh, that's just a myth. Well, yeah, but what was the myth based on? Like, how did it get started in the first place? And it kind of seems like a lot of these myths came about because people were having experiences and were trying to explain them. Jeffrey Kripal, the academic, says that contact experiences or experiences with the paranormal may be the seeds of religion.
Oh
Which I
yeah.
think is an interesting take.
Yes. And I can even see Skinwalker Ranch over time, the way it's set up with the insiders group and the investigation and trying to figure out what's true and what's not. And it, it involves a model of the world that might even touch on deity at some point, that
Mm-hmm.
out of this could evolve a religion, a
The
worldview, a
religion
way
of
of,
Skinwalker Ranch.
yes, it wouldn't be called that. It'll have a different name, but its source will be what people have experienced and learned, the people that have gotten to know each other. It could come out, it could absolutely come out of Skinwalker Ranch, the insiders group. It's an
Should we
incubator. It's an incubator for a new religion. It absolutely is. It's got an origin story. It's got a group of people that are obsessed with it. It has the potential of creating some kind of new worldview, right? It does.
should we call it fugalism?
Fugalism, maybe.
At the where the
He's
acolytes of Bard.
listen, at the center of this is the actual phenomenon itself. Without that, you've got nothing. And next to that is Brandon Fugal.
Mm-hmm.
He owns it. He's got the trademarks. He's driving the boat. Totally.
And honestly, I'm glad. I think he's going about it the right way. Like I have my own complaints about the TV show and everything. Um, but it's letting people know about this and it's encouraging them to dig deeper. And he's giving them the opportunity with the insiders group. There's discussion about trying to take the data and make it more available if they can figure out a way to do it that is actually going to be beneficial and helpful in the long run. Because it's going to take them a lot of time to put that data into a format people can work with. And it would be just a complete pointless waste if people are just going to, use it as an excuse to bash on it the way some of the skeptics want to do, or take it and just come up with completely unfounded theories based on, data points because they don't know, because they're not scientists and they don't know how to work with data like that. But they're having the discussion. They've made that clear.
Yes. Yes. And with the insiders group, they've got an opportunity there to grow it to the point where, so it's, as Brandon explained it, it's got to be self-funded. The insiders group's got to pay for itself, basically. But as more people join, it's going to grow and it's going to have more opportunities. There's going to be more, Discord sub groups on there. And it's completely scalable what they've created right now. He can go from 8,500 to 20,000 insiders with the infrastructure he's got in place. But imagine the potential of people volunteering to help with releasing and understanding the raw data we want, because it's so time consuming. It requires significant effort to get this packaged up into a form that could be analyzed, the raw data, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, they've got years worth of data.
And it's probably not in a database where they can just say, give me everything on this, and it just like spits out the audio files and the data files. And I don't think that's what they've got set up in terms of retrieval of the data. They've got the data, but it's not this easily accessible, immediate kind of a thing. But the insiders group is going to provide that resource.
Yes.
You wait and see. Crowdsourcing is going to explode with this because people want to be involved. They've got incredible talents, and people want to be able to focus on something for a couple hours a day, maybe potentially as a hobby, right?
And
people get obsessed with this. People get obsessed. People really want to spend time on this, and they want to get to know other people, and they want to be involved. It's fun.
And there's some cool people in the group, and a lot of them are having their own experiences.
Yes.
And they're recording some fascinating stuff too. So, and for people who are like, well, I don't know, committing to the insiders, you can sign up for a month, I think, and then cancel. It's not like you got to buy a year-long membership, do you? Can't you subscribe for a month, or is it?
They've got a month, and then they've got the annual to save money.
Yeah, so you can, spend a little bit more, but try it for a month and just poke around. Now, I will say one of the pieces of one of the resources that they used to have more available was the spreadsheet that was created by the users that were contributing. And they have had to limit access to that because of bad actors. People, some people got to ruin it for everyone. But all you have to do is request access to that. So if you join and you're like, where's this spreadsheet everybody's talking about? You can just contact the group leaders. Just say, how do I get access to the spreadsheet? And somebody will tell you.
That's cool. Yeah. The spreadsheet's got a list of users that have had hitchhiker effects right after focusing on Skinwalker Ranch in some way, right within minutes or an hour, some really weird stuff, unique stuff happens in their home.
Yeah.
And it goes
on. And they describe it.
Yeah. You get the details. Yep. Well, we've been going for 2 hours now.
Yeah.
It's been good.
And, we would like comments from people as well. This is an unusual format. It's just us chatting for 2 hours. This came about because we were already having these chats, just the two of us every week. That's all these are. It came out of that we're ranging on, talking about woo and philosophy and everything else. And I wasn't aware of anybody else doing this kind of stuff. And I was like, this is a great idea. And you were like, actually, I think we could make this work and we'll do this. And I think I can get Brandon. And you did. And it's been amazing. So, but we want feedback from people like, is it too long? Should we break them up? What do you want us to talk about? I think we need to start, we'll have some themed episodes and we'll really dig into some of these aspects. The woo. Let's get into that in relation to Skinwalker Ranch.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're going to have a lot more interviews with people.
Mm-hmm. We're already working on that.
We're working on it. Yep. So this might have been a boring episode, but they won't always be like this.
I don't think it was boring. No. I hope. We'll see. We'll see what other people think.
Let's get feedback. We desperately need feedback. And we can tweak this, and we want to make it better. So we need feedback. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Well, I'm going to end it for today then.